Africa is the poorest continent on Earth, and unlike Asia, where economies such as China, South Korea, and India have experienced rapid and sustained growth, most of Africa has fallen further behind. Today, a large proportion of the global population living on less than $1 a day is found in Africa, and in many countries average incomes remain shockingly low compared to developed nations. The gap between African economies and the industrialized world is now a factor of 40 or 50, wider than ever before. Of course, Africa cannot be treated as a single country. It is a continent of 54 sovereign nations, thousands of languages, and vastly different cultures, governments, and natural endowments. Still, the striking fact that poverty is so widespread across so many of these countries suggests there are underlying forces, structural, historical, and institutional, that go beyond the failures of individual governments. One starting point is geography, which set the stage for Africa's early economic trajectory. Geography matters because it shapes settlement patterns, trade possibilities, and access to resources. For most of human history, the Sahara Desert functioned like an inland ocean, cutting sub-Saharan Africa off from the vibrant networks of trade and cultural exchange that linked Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. While civilizations around the Mediterranean basin traded ideas, technologies, and goods, much of the continent remained isolated. Even today, North African states along the Mediterranean are more integrated into global trade and relatively more developed, while countries south of the Sahara still contend with deep-rooted disadvantages. The coastlines also presented challenges. Unlike Europe or East Asia, Africa's Atlantic and Indian Ocean shores have relatively few natural deep-water harbors, making the construction of world-class ports expensive. Inland transport networks were equally problematic. During colonial times, railways were laid primarily to extract resources, carrying minerals or crops from the interior to ports, rather than to integrate domestic markets. This left many regions disconnected, with supply chains designed for the benefit of foreign powers rather than local economies. The result is a legacy of underdeveloped infrastructure that continues to limit regional trade today. Agriculture faced barriers too. While parts of the continent are fertile, large areas are plagued by fragile soils prone to erosion, and much of the land requires careful management to remain productive. Historically, tropical diseases such as malaria shaped settlement patterns, discouraging dense urbanization and favoring small, scattered communities. Combined with wildlife threats and the lack of draft animals in certain regions, this created conditions where people remained dispersed, moving frequently rather than concentrating in towns. Dense towns are where specialization, exchange, and innovation usually take root. Without them, societies remained more fragmented, and economies less productive. But geography is only part of the story. MIT economists Darren Acemoglu and James Robinson argue that institutions, the rules by which societies organize power and protect rights, are even more decisive. Inclusive institutions, which secure property rights, provide impartial courts, and distribute political power broadly, create environments where people are willing to invest, innovate, and take risks. Extractive institutions, by contrast, concentrate power in the hands of a few, impose arbitrary taxes, and provide little protection for entrepreneurs or households. In these settings, rational behavior means caution, keep wealth hidden, stay small, avoid visibility, or leave altogether. The failure to adopt even simple technologies illustrates how institutions shape outcomes. In parts of Africa, wheeled carts were slow to spread, not because people didn't understand them, but because predatory rulers could seize goods in transit. Carrying loads on one's head was inefficient but safer. When leaders can expropriate at will, investing in new tools or infrastructure becomes a gamble. This logic scales. Why build a factory if a decree could confiscate it tomorrow? Why adopt new farming techniques if taxes will simply rise with your output? Institutions set the incentives, and incentives determine whether economies stagnate or thrive. History then layered further obstacles onto this foundation. The Atlantic slave trade devastated the continent, fueling wars and incentivizing rulers to capture rivals to sell in exchange for European firearms. Human capital, the young and able-bodied, was drained for centuries, leaving scars that still shape societies. Colonialism compounded the damage. European powers designed African states not to foster inclusive development but to extract resources. Railways, ports, schools, and courts were built with the single purpose of moving goods outward. Little effort was made to train local bureaucracies, establish broad-based education, or create accountable governments. When independence arrived in the mid-20th century, many African states inherited extremely shallow institutions. Borders were drawn with little regard for ethnic, cultural, or linguistic realities, leaving countries divided internally. Bureaucracies were thin, courts weak, and infrastructure limited. In this vacuum, many leaders relied on patronage systems, consolidating power through networks of loyalty rather than merit. These extractive systems, combined with Cold War geopolitics, meant that even promising reformers often succumbed to corruption or authoritarianism. For investors and skilled workers, the risks of instability, confiscation, or policy reversals remained high, discouraging the very investments needed to escape poverty. The modern consequences are stark. Political instability fuels uncertainty, which discourages investment, which limits job creation, which then fuels further unrest. Globalization has raised the bar, international markets demand reliability, scale, and speed, but many African producers cannot compete due to weak infrastructure and inconsistent rules. Talented workers emigrate, chasing opportunities in Europe, North America, or Asia, deepening the brain drain. Those who remain face environments where corruption, red tape, and poor enforcement keep most firms small and informal. These dynamics reinforce a vicious cycle of low investment, low productivity, and low trust. And yet, progress is possible, and examples prove it. Botswana is one of the clearest cases. At independence, it was one of the poorest countries in the world, landlocked and resource-dependent. But Botswana established secure property rights, developed a relatively impartial judiciary, and managed diamond revenues prudently. Instead of becoming a curse, diamonds became the foundation of public investment in schools, healthcare, and infrastructure. Today Botswana enjoys one of the highest per capita incomes in sub-Saharan Africa. Its story shows that even in difficult geographic and historical circumstances, good institutions can unlock growth. Other areas provide hope as well. Mobile money platforms like M-Pesa in Kenya have shown how digital technologies can leapfrog weak banking systems and provide millions with access to financial services. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, offers a vision of integrated regional markets that could create the scale necessary for manufacturing and agribusiness to thrive. Investments in education, especially for women and girls, have already shown high returns in health, fertility, and productivity. And where courts, procurement systems, or land registries have been digitized and made transparent, investor confidence has grown. The path forward is not about a single silver bullet but about building credible institutions step by step. Courts that resolve cases on time, tax systems that are simple and predictable, public spending that citizens can see and trust, infrastructure that connects inland markets to global trade routes, and schools that prepare young people for modern economies. All of these are achievable, and all of them reinforce one another. In the end, geography explains why Africa started with disadvantages, but institutions explain why poverty persists. Extractive rules create rational behaviors of caution and fragmentation, inclusive rules unlock specialization, investment, and innovation. The conclusion is short: Africa's future depends not on rewriting its geography, but on reforming its institutions. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel for more such videos.